Right now, and I mean right this second, you cannot feel your clothes. I know that sounds wrong, so try it. Actually pay attention to your shirt against your back. Now, your socks. And the waistband around your pants. You felt them just now, didn't you? But 5 seconds ago, you had no idea they were there. And in another 5 seconds, they'll disappear from your awareness once again. Your brain registered your clothes when you put them on this morning. And then, quietly, automatically, without you asking, it decided they were no longer worth reporting. This isn't your brain failing you. This is your brain working exactly as designed. And once you understand how it works, you'll catch yourself doing it everywhere. Welcome back to the Psychology Notebook. I'm Desiree, and this is Psych 101, the series where we build a real foundation in psychology, one concept at a time. If you've been following from the beginning, then you already know Frank. He's our beloved forest monitor. But if you're new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. You can absolutely follow this video on its own. But Frank's story is going to matter today. He's been investigating tree damage near the beaver settlement, but still hasn't found what's causing it. In the last video, we covered transduction, thresholds, and Weber's law, which is the rule that says your brain measures change proportionally, not in raw numbers. And I told you there was one more mechanism at work. One that explains why walking the same path every day can actually make you worse at noticing new things, even things that are well above your detection threshold. Frank learned that the hard way. The tree damage in his forest was real. It was visible, but Frank had walked that path so many times that his brain had quietly stopped reporting what was on it. Today, we find out exactly why. What is sensory adaptation? Sensory adaptation is the reduction in your sensory system's response to a stimulus that stays constant over time. When something keeps showing up without changing, like the same pressure, the same smell, the same sound, your sensory receptors slow down. They fire fewer electrical signals per second until eventually the message they're sending your brain becomes so faint that it barely registers. And here's the crazy part. This isn't a decision your brain makes. This isn't you choosing to ignore something. This happens at the receptor itself. Now think back to lesson 10 when we discussed sensation. The receptors that stop picking up data in your environment are in your skin, your nose, and even your retina in your eye. They stop reporting what's really there before the signal even reaches your conscious awareness. Here's an analogy on how this works. Think about a security camera versus a motion sensor. A security camera records everything constantly, like nothing has to move. It runs whether anything is happening or not. Now, a motion sensor is smarter. It goes quiet when nothing changes. And the moment something moves, it fires immediately. Your sensory system is built like a motion sensor. What stays the same gets filtered out. What changes gets flagged immediately. This isn't a flaw. This is the design. And I can prove it to you right now. Think about your feet and your socks, the pressure of the floor underneath you. You felt them just now, and probably for the first time in a while, but they were there the whole time. The signal was there, but your brain had filed it under not changing, not relevant, stop reporting. The moment I pointed it out, the context shifted, and your brain woke that signal back up. Why receptors stop firing? Sensory adaptation isn't magic. There are 3 specific things happening at the biological level, and they all come down to one idea. Your receptors are not built to run forever on the same input. Your sensory receptors generate signals by opening ion channels. These are tiny gates in the cell membrane that lets charged particles flow in and out, creating the electrical signal your brain reads. Under constant stimulation, those channels temporarily shut down. They physically cannot keep generating the same signal. the electrical charge runs slow and the receptor goes quiet. For smell and taste, the process is slightly different. These receptors work through proteins that bind to odor or flavor molecules. Under sustained exposure, those receptor proteins pull themselves inside the cell and go offline. This is why you stop smelling your own perfume or cologne within a few minutes. The molecules are still in the air, but the proteins that were detecting them have gone quiet. A brand new smell will trigger them immediately. It's not that your nose broke, it's that your nose stopped caring about the old scent. It isn't only the receptors either. The brain itself actively suppresses repetitive, unchanging signals. Your thalamus, that's your brain's relay station, applies inhibitory filtering, reducing the amount of redundant input that reaches the cortex. This means that your brain literally turns down the volume on anything that has been playing on repeat without changing. All three of these work together, and the result is the same. A constant stimulus becomes progressively invisible. Not because it's disappeared, but because your brain has decided it wasn't news anymore. Fast versus slow adapting receptors. Not every receptor behaves the same way when a stimulus stays constant. Some adapt in seconds, while some barely adapt at all. And understanding which is which explains a lot. Fast adapting receptors fire strongly at the start of a stimulus and again when it stops. In between, they go silent. These are the receptors that told you your shirt was on when you first put it on this morning. Change is the signal. Constancy is silence. Your smell receptors are in this category. So are your touch receptors that detect light contact and vibration. Slow adapting receptors continue to fire as long as the stimulus is present. They don't quiet down. These are like monitoring systems, not change detectors. They tell your brain where your arm is right now without you having to look. They track sustained pressure, skin stretch, body position, and they are running continuously in the background, and they are very good at their jobs. And then there are the nociceptors, also known as the pain receptors. These do not fully adapt. Like if you break your arm, you can't just wait it out until the pain fades. Or if your hand is resting on something dangerously hot, that signal does not get filed under not news. This isn't a design flaw. This is one of the most important features of your nervous system. Pain is your body's signal to stop what you are doing before it kills you. Adapting to it would be catastrophic. Your brain draws a very hard line between uncomfortable and damaging, and it never lets the dangerous side go quiet. And to help really make these concepts stick, here are 4 classic examples. 4 classic examples. Example 1. When you walk into somebody else's home, you notice the smell right away. The people who live there, they genuinely can't detect it. Significant olfactory adaptation kicks in within about 60 seconds of continuous exposure. Near complete adaptation to a constant odor can happen in under 3 minutes. That's why perfume wearers over-apply. They've adapted to their own scent so thoroughly that they have no idea how much they're wearing. And here's the thing I want you to remember. The receptors haven't stopped working. A new smell will trigger them instantly. They just stopped caring about the familiar one. Example 2. Now, you jump into cold water and it's a shock. 60 seconds later, it's tolerable. 2 minutes in, you barely notice it. But push the water temperature into a truly dangerous range and it doesn't fade. The nociceptors hold that line every time. Now I have an interactive experiment. Stare at a fixed point like you see on the screen and don't move your eyes. Objects in your peripheral vision will start to fade and then disappear. This is called Troxler's fading, described by a Swiss physician back in 1804. Here's what's happening. When the same image stays in the exact same position on your retina, the retina cells responding to it slow down and stop firing. Your brain just fills in the blank with the surrounding information. The object is still there. Your receptors just stopped reporting it. Now, here's the part that kind of breaks people's brains. Right now, even when you're trying to hold your gaze completely still, your eyes are making tiny, involuntary tremors called microcassades. Dozens per second, constantly shifting the image on your retina by a fraction of a degree, just enough to keep the signal fresh, just enough to stop adaptation from erasing your visual field entirely. Because without microcassades, your vision would fade to nothing in seconds. You are being kept from going visually blank by tremors you cannot feel and did not choose. Last one. The refrigerator in your kitchen has been humming for years. You don't hear it. But the moment it turns off, you notice the silence immediately. Your auditory cortex adapted to that constant hum so thoroughly that you stopped representing it consciously at all. Its absence is what snaps you back. Bring it back to Frank. When we opened this lesson, Frank was out on his usual morning patrol. He was monitoring the trail near the beaver settlement, looking for signs of whatever has been causing the damage in that part of the woods. He has been walking the same path every single day. And that's exactly the problem. The same trees, the same rocks, the same light filtering through the canopy at the same time every morning. His sensory system had adapted the entire scene out. Not because it had stopped working, but because nothing about the trail was new anymore. His brain had filed it under familiar, not relevant, stop reporting. The damage was there. It was above his absolute threshold, meaning that if you had dropped Frank onto that trail for the very first time, he would have spotted the damage immediately. But he wasn't seeing it for the first time. He was seeing it for like the 100th time. And against the richly adapted background of a path his brain had already classified as normal, the damage didn't generate enough of a change signal to break through. His receptors weren't firing on it. His thalamus was turning down the volume. The signal existed, it just never made it to conscious awareness. That is sensory adaptation working exactly as designed. And it was costing him the investigation. So what changed? Frank changed his own context. He took a different route, a path his brain hadn't adapted to yet. And suddenly, when he looked back and approached the familiar trail from a new angle, everything looked different. The broken saplings, the disturbed soil, the pattern of damage he had been walking past for weeks. He didn't get new information, he got out of his own adaptation. And that's the practical takeaway here. When you feel like you're missing something, when the answer seems like it should be obvious but you can't see it, sometimes the problem isn't attention, it's adaptation. Maybe your brain has filtered the signal out because you've been too close to it for too long. Change the context and come at it at a different angle and let your receptors fire at it fresh. But here is where it gets even more interesting, and this is what we're going to dig into in the next lesson, because breaking adaptation is one strategy. There's another layer to this, and it's arguably the more powerful one. When your brain adapts something out, it doesn't just go quiet. It doesn't leave a blank space. It fills the gap. It starts predicting what should be there based on everything it already knows. And then it shows you that version instead of what's actually in front of you. Frank's brain wasn't just filtering the damage out, it was actively replacing it with what it expected the trail to look like. Now that process of your brain generating its own version of reality and presenting it to you as the real thing, that's called top-down processing, and it's happening right now in everything you're looking at. We'll get into exactly how that works and why it's so hard to override and what it means for you, how you perceive the world, in Lesson 13. Subscribe so you don't miss it. All right, now it's Brain Busters time. Let's see if you were paying attention. I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. Each one has 4 answer choices. Try to guess the correct concept before I reveal the answer. Are you ready? Let's go. Question 1. You start a new job. On day 1, the office has a really strong smell. I'm talking coffee, cleaning products, maybe something floral. You notice it the second you walked in. But by week 2, you walk through that same door and smell almost nothing. What happened? A. Weber's Law. B. Olfactory adaptation. C. Absolute threshold. Or D. Microsaccades. The correct answer, B. Olfactory adaptation. Olfactory adaptation is a specific form of sensory adaptation that happens with smell. Your smell receptors become less responsive to the constant, unchanging scent molecules in that office. They did not stop working. If someone brought in a new smell, you would probably notice it right away. But that familiar background smell in the office? Your nervous system basically said, "You already know this one. No need to keep reporting it." Brainbuster 2. A person drives past a noisy construction site every day on their commute. At first, the jackhammers are loud and annoying, but after 2 weeks, they barely notice them. Then one day, a passenger rides with them for the first time and says, "How are you not losing your mind listening to that every day?" What is happening here? A. Sensory adaptation only. B. Habituation only. C. Both sensory adaptation and habituation. Or D. Weber's Law. The correct answer? C. Both sensory adaptation and habituation. And this is where we need to separate the two. Sensory adaptation is happening closer to the receptor level. The sensory system starts reducing its response to a repeated, constant sound. Habituation is happening more at the brain and learning level. The brain has learned that this repeated sound is not important, not dangerous, and not worth reacting to every single time. The body turns down the signal, and the brain stops treating it like it's breaking news. Now, Brain Busters 3. Now, this might be a little bit tricky if you just so happened to miss the previous lesson, but go ahead and give it your best shot. A chef is seasoning soup. She adds a pinch of salt to a small cup of broth and immediately tastes the difference. Then she adds the exact same pinch of salt to a huge stock pot and cannot taste any change at all. Which concept from the last video explains this? A. Sensory adaptation. B. Weber's Law. C. Olfactory adaptation. Or D. Troxler's fading. The correct answer, B. Weber's Law. Weber's Law states that the just noticeable difference depends on the proportion. A pinch of salt in a small cup is a big proportional change, so the chef can taste it. But that same pinch of salt in a huge stock pot is a tiny proportional change, so it is too small to notice. This connects our last 2 lessons really nicely. Weber's Law explains how much something has to change before you notice it, and sensory adaptation explains what happens when something remains unchanged. And together, they explain a lot about how your brain filters the world around you. And if this lesson made you suddenly aware of your socks again, show some love with a like and subscribe so that you don't miss video 13 the moment it arrives. For those who want a visual shortcut to mastering these concepts, the full Psychology Flashcard pack covers 318 essential terms and a rapid-fire crash course. You can find the link in the description. I appreciate you learning with me today. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them. Comment them down below. And according to YouTube, this is the best video for you on your learning journey. Click it, and I'll see you over there.